Oh, I have to open the 1 second. Is my screen visible? Not yet.
Yes, it's visible. KB, SD, D, yes is visible.
No. I'm not sharing my screen. Just hold on 1 second.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba.
Jai Baba Sanjay.
Jai Baba, Ravi. Yeah, Jai Baba.
Babaji, you want to read 7 realities and then we pick up from there?
Okay.
In
Avatar
fact-
Meher Baba ki jai.
Ki Jai.
In fact, how to
The
love God. Thank
seven,
you.
yes,
Sorry.
the 7 realities. How to love God. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. Something hiding?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our own dear ones, we love God. Number 1, if instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many others, we are loving God. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. Lord, the screen. Okay. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to hurt or harm any of His beings, we are loving God. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Him as your own self. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. So we had stopped at 241 last time, a page into the chapter called With Consciousness Be Like a Stone. So I think we can pick up from, redo this page and continue so that there's clearer context. Anything from the last week's read, or any questions or suggestions or thoughts before we start? No. Okay, so let's get started. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Jai.
With consciousness, be like a stone. Stone has no desire, no hope, no feeling, no distinctive body, and no thought for the next day. If you hammer it or kick it, a stone does not feel. If you garland a stone, as in the worship of stone idols, the stone remains unaffected. If you keep it in the toilet or make a toilet out of stone, it is not miserable. If you have a stone in the walls of a palace or a precious stone on your finger, it is not pleased. Under all conditions, the stone remains unmoved. It is moved by nothing, unimpressed by anything. But as you use a stone, you reap the result and are affected. If you kick it, your foot will hurt. If you hammer and split it into pieces, does it cry out? But if a stone falls on your foot, you will cry out. If you build a palace or a bathroom of stone, either way it will be useful to you. Yet it knows not the difference between a palace or a bathroom. How you use stone determines how you will be affected. People fight and kill for the stone and claim that some stone has supreme value. But by laudation or bloodstone remains unmoved. I'll read that line again. But by laudation or blood, stone remains unmoved. Stone itself enjoys nothing, suffers nothing, and remains unaffected under all conditions. Similarly, if a person becomes like a stone, but with full human consciousness, he achieves the consciousness of God. Infinite mind in stone form experiences creation most finitely, meaning practically as nil, because stone's illusory consciousness is almost nil. In the state of a Sadguru, infinite mind also experiences creation most finitely as zero. But infinite mind cannot experience itself in the form of stone, whereas in the state of a Sadguru, infinite mind fully experiences itself. Meaning, a Sadguru has conscious, infinite, real mind. In stone form, experience of the infinite mind is most finite, and infinite mind experiences itself most limitedly in latency. Infinite mind experiences the universe most finitely through the stone form, as the consciousness of stone is most limited.
Here I would like to bring in a point, Karthik.
Sure.
Long time ago, when we were reading God Speaks, this thought came back to me. We were reading the, I think, second chapter, Evolution, and somebody asked a question: how are the impressions of being a stone helpful now? Sunil ji, do you remember, Sunil ji? Do you recall that question? I think Sanjay, you were there too.
Yeah. I recall this discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what we read just now is the answer for that, right? Stone
Yes.
with consciousness. Yeah.
So Baba wants us to be like stones.
Stone.
Yeah. I'll continue. I'll repeat that line. In ordinary man, infinite mind has illimited experience of itself and unlimited experience of the universe. However, in the state of a Sadguru, the infinite mind has perfect experience of itself as infinite mind itself and experiences the creation in the most finite way. This means a Sadguru experiences the universe as most finite in comparison to the self, and his experience of the universe is as his shadow. By observing one's own shadow, one may visualize this experience. Shadow has the most finite experience compared to man himself. It is lifeless, substanceless, and nothing without the man. Very good analogy, the shadow. To attain God realization, ultimately the state of the infinite mind in man should be like that of stone. This means that man's mind must be identical to the state of mind in stone, but with consciousness retained. Because in the form of stone, the infinite mind never experiences the gross, subtle, and mental worlds, and yet the stone exists.
Yeah, basically it is talking of detachment. And there is a
Correct.
simile of the lotus also given in the same way. Yeah. So
Correct.
it is there in water, but it doesn't touch it. So that is what it is.
Correct. I continue. To achieve realization, there should be no experience of creation, and yet the act of thinking should be infinite. The soul, the infinite intelligence, the real self, and real mind is infinite, and only through infinite thinking can it be thought of. The infinite mind, in its ultimate state, is the human mind. But for the infinite mind to attain its original state beyond, it should be like a stone's mind. Only then can reality be experienced. This
Read it
means
again.
that
Read it again. Read it again from
okay,
the infinite mind, please. Yeah.
sure. The infinite mind in its ultimate state is the human mind. But for the infinite mind to attain its original state beyond, it should be like a stone's mind. Only then can reality be experienced. This means
Very
that,
simple, right?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Very
So
this
simple.
means, yeah,
No, no.
yeah.
go to the stone.
Infinite mind in its So infinite mind in its ultimate state is the human mind. Einstein kind of, I think, simile. Yeah. But for infinite mind to attain its original state at the beyond state, it should be like a stone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stone's mind.
What's the
Continue.
No,
Einstein
y- y-
simile, Sanjayji?
Yeah. So it's like the peak of knowledge, it's
Okay.
not
At
a
the at
full
the in the
it's
in the
not a
creation level.
full in the intellectual level. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
to really go to
ultimately,
the
the
beyond. Yeah.
solution for every situation is love is the solution.
Yeah.
When the people like Tyagaraja are great lovers, they are completely in, a lot of musts and all. They don't care about their personal needs. I mean, when they sleep, they sleep. When they're hungry, they eat. When they have to, excrete, they excrete. But they are constantly in love with their God. I mean, that is what I think is like a stone.
Yeah. The next sentence I think is giving some better clarification. Let's go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. This means that the infinite mind should experience nothing of creation, that is illusion,
Hmm.
and yet be conscious of itself as infinite, as everything, which is reality. This real experience is had in nirvana when one experiences fully the total nothing, the complete zero, and instantaneously one experiences the total everything, the complete all in nirvikalpa. When this realization occurs, one may appear outwardly as a stone, but inwardly he has infinite consciousness. Those God realized beings who exist like stones, completely unconscious of the world which is nothing to them, are the Brahmi Bhuts or Majzuts. In the form of Ishwar, the formless universal I, mind is infinite and without body. There is no experience of creation. Experience of creation is necessary for self experience, that is, for self realization. To attain self-realization, the mind should be infinite and bodiless and should not experience creation. The experience which is necessary for self-realization is to pass through infinite unconsciousness, taking a body and mind to gain consciousness, so that ultimately one can shed body and mind and experience mind as infinite and in a bodiless state, formlessness, to have the ultimate experience of the self and be infinitely conscious, a real infinite thinker, means that mind should be infinite. One should be in a formless state, and one should not experience creation but only the self. However,
So it means,
yeah, go ahead.
in one way, it means that we should be sleeping but wide awake, both at the same time. Sleeping to the world and awake to the reality.
Yeah, that's a good alternate or mirrored way of looking at it. Perfect.
Yes, yes.
However, in the form of Ishwar, the infinite mind works endlessly to create, preserve, and dissolve the universe, and thereby does not experience itself. Its infinite thinking is directed toward creating, preserving, and dissolving universes, not in experiencing itself. It's a soul.
Yeah. CEO. It's an operating thing, things in action.
Correct. Well, what's that again? I don't understand the
I
analogy.
mean, it's just the state of God, which is busy doing the three actions that we said: creating, preserving, and dissolving. It's not it's not experiencing itself as the uh, as God. This state of God is Ishvara state of God is busy doing this, creating, preserving, and dissolving universes. That's what it is.
Hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
In the form of stone, mind is bodiless. It is utterly unconscious of body and does not experience creation, but most finitely, because its activity, thinking, is most limited. In man, mind is infinite, but man has a body. He has consciousness of the body, its desires, senses, and urges. And through the body, he is engaged in the work of experiencing the universe. In the state of Ishwar, infinite unconsciousness, formless I, mind is infinite and bodiless and has no experience of creation, but is involved in creating, preserving, and dissolving creation. In the form of stone, mind is not developed, and mind does not create, preserve, or dissolve, and does not experience because the stone's experience of creation is absolutely most finite or almost nil. Yet, at the same time, because the stone's experience is most finite, it is great. Because it is unaffected by anything that happens in the form of man, mind is infinite and is not occupied with creating, preserving, and dissolving universes, but man is submissive to the body's wants, senses, and needs, and through this body experiences the universe. To experience itself, the infinite mind should be bodiless. unconscious of all desires, senses, and needs. It should not remain bound in creating, preserving, and dissolving as Ishwar, formless I, or be involved in the work of experiencing creation on a universal scale, which is only possible for a Sadguru. In the ultimate sense, the meaning of self realization is that in man form, the infinite mind does not experience the gross, subtle, and mental worlds, although as man it has gross, subtle, and mental bodies. This experience is the unconscious experience of man in the state of deep sleep when his bodies are non functioning. In deepest sleep, there is no experience of the gross, subtle, and mental worlds. Man lies there like a stone, and no consciousness of the gross, subtle, or mental bodies, since the human consciousness forgets these bodies and drops them when it falls into sound sleep. Self realization means that similarly, in the awake state, man should forget the three bodies, drop them aside, and yet remain conscious. Conscious not of the three worlds, but of the soul. A realized man is asleep to creation and yet conscious of self. The human condition is the state of false mind and false I, conditional existence. Man's mind is full of sanskaras, and he is conscious of limited mind, mental body, energy, subtle body, and form, gross body. The divine condition of self realization is that the man is in the state of real mind and real I, which is unconditional existence. In realization, mind has no sanskaras and is unconscious of the limited mind. Mind is infinite, unconscious of the subtle body. Power is infinite. And the gross form, bliss, is formlessness. Okay. An ordinary person.
Bliss, the term bliss is formlessness. It's the first time I think we are hearing that.
Yeah, that's why I paused. So he's trying to
Yes,
link the three states. So
yes.
unconscious of limited mind, mind is basically mind is infinite is the point that's being made. But subtle body power, that's understandable. Gross form, bliss as an aspect of being formlessness is I think first preference we are seeing. Yeah.
Yes, yes. In the gross form, what we
Mhm.
have is happiness, more related to the form itself. But bliss is beyond that, which is formless.
Yes, I think except for Sadguru, it is in a larger context. He may be experiencing bliss and he is in the body.
Yes, yes, yes.
But
yes.
generally, for the whole mankind, bliss, because we are attached to the body, unless we are formless, the real bliss cannot be, or we are detached to the form, the real bliss cannot be experienced.
Yes.
Fair. Okay, let me continue. An ordinary person is a thinking mind, but it thinks because of sanskaras, and in turn, mental, subtle, and gross thoughts generate more sanskaras. A Sadguru also is a thinking mind, but he has no sanskaras and only thinks of the self. The condition of limited mind is the ordinary human condition, the false mind full of sanskaras, limitations, which cannot stop thinking in relation to its gross, subtle, and mental bodies. The state of the unlimited mind in the form of a Sadguru is a sanskara-less state, without impressions from the gross, subtle, or the mental bodies. Instead, mind has fully developed consciousness, and this consciousness is divine because it is infinite. In the state of infinite consciousness, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, infinite mind has no sanskaras but still thinks, yet it only thinks of the self. I'll read that line again. In the state of infinite consciousness, Nirvikalpa Samadhi, infinite mind has no sanskaras but still thinks, yet it only thinks of the self, capital S. Mind should think of itself and not of the bodies resulting from the sanskaras. Mind should not think through sanskaras. If mind has no sanskaras and still thinks, it has attained self-realization. He who is self-realized is just like a stone, but a stone with infinite consciousness.
If we can imagine this thinking process, say whenever we think of, we start with some, say, substantial thing, gross thing, and then start thinking on that. So that is the normal process. So we need to think without anything. That is almost no thinking, just like a stone. But to be always conscious while in that state. Jai Baba.
Yeah. Other point that I observed, I think we kind of taste a bit of whether we call it bliss or whatever during meditation. When you get into a deep meditation and lose your bodily consciousness, where you are and what is around you and all that, you get that
Yes.
feel. It could be a millionth of the real bliss, but is that, I think that is a simile I can think of.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other inputs, thoughts on those lines? Okay, so we'll continue onward to the next chapter, natural and unnatural sanskaras. Natural sanskaras is equal to the one sound Om, the word. Unnatural sanskaras is equal to all other sounds, words. Natural sanskaras are the one sound of Om, and unnatural sanskaras are all other sounds heard. The first desire of God was to know himself. Thus, he gave the first word, Who am I? This first word, Om, was the first sanskara. It is natural. All other sounds in creation are the mental, subtle, or gross form of the sound Om. And these sounds are unnatural. I am this, I am that. Sound is the gross form of subtle thought, energy, which is outcome of the most finite formless sanskaras in seed form in the mental sphere. Something profound being mentioned here. So let me read this line again. Sound is the gross form of subtle thought, which is energy, which is outcome of the most finite formless sanskaras in seed form in the mental sphere. So the thoughts that come out in the mental sphere are manifested in the gross form as sound. Sound, I'll read again. Sound is the gross form of subtle thought, which is energy. So the representation of a subtle thought can be or is in sound, which, by the way, is the outcome of the most finite, formless sanskaras in seed form in the mental sphere.
Yes, nice. So it starts in the mental sphere, comes down to the subtle
and
sphere,
manifests.
and then manifests as sound in the grass. And here I faintly remember to have read that in Vedanta, they say all sounds are in Om. That's why Om is given the primal position. So it looks like that. So all sounds are useless unless you can realize Om. All other sounds.
Yeah, I think subtle thought, basically the thoughts are energy, right? What we think, and when we speak, the sound comes out, which is the gross form of the subtle thought. Sound is an energy, we know. I mean, science students know this actually, how the sound waves move and all that, the air. So that's the energy it is talking of. And it is in a gross form because the air, all these the particles in the air move. How does the sound wave travels into the air? And also in the sound, in the water or any other medium, depending on various physical parameters of that medium. So it is a gross form of a subtle thought. Yeah. So
it's
is that
also,
energy which comes out of our mouth, or it comes out of a
Yes,
drum or anything? Yeah.
It can also, your analogy is quite nice. You can also think in terms of sound is almost like action. So from the thought,
Yes,
it
very
comes out.
yes.
And then,
Yes. It's a very primitive form of action. Which is
So it is action
very,
in the sense that in the gross realm, it moves the diaphragm or the drum, like you said, right? That physical action causes something. So when the diaphragm moves, you talk. When the drum moves, the sound is emanated, right? When the drum vibrates, right? So in that sense, it's a physical manifestation of that. It's a thought. I think
a thought.
I like what we are getting to.
Yeah.
Okay. So with that, I'll continue. From the source of soul, that is soul's original state, the word Om comes into the gross sphere through subtle and mental spheres, and this word is the natural sound of the universe. All other sounds then manifest in the gross sphere from the subtle, and the subtle sound manifests from the mental on account of sanskaras. In the very beginning, from the root of the original state of God, the infinite intelligence not thinking, the word, the one sound of Om, Omkara, Ahura, came out and sounded from the beyond the beyond. And through this formless word, words began appearing. Infinite intelligence from the form
began. Okay. Through this formless word, forms began appearing.
Correct. So I'm again, even a few lines ago, I was reminded when you said, Om is given the primordial position in Vedanta, and I also do not know exact references, but yes, there is multiple references to that. But I'm sure those of you who went to a Catholic school have surely heard the biblical reference is also in the beginning there was the Word. Right. So even in the Bible, the primordial sound, obviously they do not say Om, it is Amen. And even in in all the Abrahamic religions, there is Amin, right? In Islam, it becomes Amin. In the Bible, it is Amen. And I think only in this book I saw equation of Om to Ahura, right? In multiple places in this book, Om is used synonymously or contextually with Ahura. So I guess that in Zoroastrianism, the first sound or the primordial sound is Ahura. Right?
Yeah, basically it is also saying the gross creation started with a Om sound, which created a gross impression, as we were earlier talking, and slowly transmitted into the gaseous forms, and then various levels of gases. Though they call it one, but there are various grades of gases that were created, and ultimately the stone was created. So that's the first thing which moved the gross world, actually. The sound, Om.
Correct.
I
The
think
first
I
vibration.
took it that way. Yeah, the first vibration. Yeah.
Vibration, yes.
Yeah,
First vibration, which creates multiple, say, movement. And then this movement, as it expands, creates a lot of all the, say, till it becomes totally a gross thing.
Yes.
It keeps moving.
Yeah.
So I will start again from this para. In the very beginning, from the root of the original state of God, the infinite intelligence, not thinking, the word, the one sound of Om, Omkara, Ahura, came out and sounded from the beyond beyond. And through this formless word, forms began appearing. Infinite intelligence from the form of stone to the condition of man is in the state of the false I, false knowledge, false self, false consciousness, false living, and these conditions of perception are of a limited nature, and these conditions make up unnatural sanskaras. Though imperceptible, the infinite intelligence is thinking as infinite mind in every limited condition, but in a vapor state, formless. This vaporish condition of the infinite mind is the natural creation of the sanskaras. Naturally, then, from stone to animal form, knowledge, infinite intelligence, does not become conscious knowledge, intelligence, until human form, as while passing through evolution, it remains in a vaporish condition, substanceless. In human form, knowledge does become fully conscious, but not that knowledge, perception, derived by man, is infinite false knowledge. For this reason, the human form contacts unnatural sanskaras, and man's progress to know himself and his progress towards achieving knowledge infinite comes to an unnatural stop. The root of these unnatural sanskaras in this thinking of false knowledge, which forms the infinite false ego. The infinite false ego creates out of itself the expansion of man's imagination. Up to the animal form, the evolution of consciousness progresses through natural sanskaras from one form to another and is relatively natural until the unnatural sanskaras that man contacts are wiped out. The individual cannot progress, meaning he cannot enter the process of involution.
Here
Consciousness.
there is a bit of confusion between unnatural and natural as you read through the passage. I'm a bit getting
I agree.
confused there.
I agree because in the first para, the everything other than Om is equated to unnatural sanskaras.
Unnatural, yes.
Whereas in this para which we were reading now, the unnatural sanskaras seem to appear only after man's imagination. So I agree with your confusion, but I don't have an answer. So here
Sorry,
he
what is
says,
the confusion? Sorry.
Yeah, all that comes into man, no? Because prarabdha sanskaras are created before the man. So all the sanskaras are there, you know. So, but their experience begins much later. Yeah.
No, I think so. So what is the unnatural sanskara in Bhau's terms? Unnatural sanskaras are first. I first encountered in discourses, right? And it's based natural and unnatural are in the Sanskaras chapter. Now here he starts with one provocative line. Natural sanskaras are the one sound of Om, and unnatural sanskaras are all other sounds heard. Right? So literally, and then he goes on to explain, first desire of God was to know himself, that he gave the first word. After that, all sounds in creation are unnatural. Right? Now, whereas here he says, up to the animal form, the evolution of consciousness progresses through natural sanskaras, which is closer to what we have heard in discourses. Okay.
Yes.
I don't disagree.
Yeah.
From one form to another, and is relatively natural until the unnatural sanskaras that man contacts are wiped out. The individual cannot progress. So I think
the first explanation is for the enlightened people, you know, enlightened people, you know. The second explanation is for the gross bodied like us.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
what is the confusion? What is the confusion?
I'll tell you, the sanskaras which get built up through the evolution is all the imaginations are additions of each of the forms which get evolved from, say, stone to man stage. But in the man stage, man goes back to these sanskaras, and he thinks, he being an animal, he has so many traits of each of these evolutionary root causes which are playing in his mind. So that is to be removed. So if you remove all those previous imprints, then you become totally sanskaraless. So that may be the way he is trying to think here. So as the development of evolution is happening, all sanskaras are natural, but their recapitulation in man, while he is reincarnating, they become totally unnatural samskaras for him, for man. That's how I look at it.
Well, the thing is, until the animal form, they have natural sanskaras, right? Everything is happening in an auto process, and they don't have any control. So basically, natural sanskaras can be divided into 4 categories. We thought about it, and what are those 4 categories are? Hungry. What do the animals feel? Hungry. So they go and eat and drink, and they need security, and they need they do procreation. So these are the 4 and sleep, right? When they are sleepy, they sleep in the night or whenever they sleep. So sleep, hunger, security, and procreation. These are the 4 different kinds of activities that they are involved in. Those are the one which are the major natural sanskaras categories that we acquired from the previous lifetimes as in the evolution period. Now, once the consciousness become mature, we have choices that we make. But basically, we are living on those natural sanskaras. Only thing is we want security. What do? We buy a house. But and we have a security system and four walls and lock and key that makes us feel secured. But what we do is we don't just go with the basic secured house. I mean, if you have more money, we go for a fancier house. And then coming to eating, when we are hungry, we don't stop at eating at a basic food. You know, animals, when they are hungry, like a lion, when they are hungry, they eat, they hunt and they eat the meat. Or cow, they graze the grass. And when they are satisfied, they don't eat anymore. Whereas we have a choice, because we have a choice in the mind, we exercise that. We want to, our mind wants to be, because we have this greed and we want more. So we want a better, more, and enjoyable thing. But ultimate goal of all these things is how much are we enjoying? These human things causes unnatural sanskaras. But all these unnatural sanskaras are based on the fundamental basic things are natural sanskaras only. So anyway, coming back to the involution period, natural sanskaras, it's not possible for us to stop them. It's only in the involution period that Baba, it will be erased by the perfect master or the avatar. But we have to try. We have to try to exercise control and get to some point, and rest of the part, perfect masters will take care of it. That's what it is. I hope. I think I think any clear or more confusion?
Yeah. Yes, you put it in a very understandable way of what I said. Natural
Yeah.
samskaras becoming unnatural in human form, and getting rid of that is the evolutionary process. Yes.
Jai Baba.
Hello.
Great,
Yes.
great. So I'm just continuing.
Yeah.
I'll just continue then. Now that we are sure that what each of these natural and unnatural sanskaras, I'll read the last para that we were reading again and continue. Up to the animal form, the evolution of consciousness progresses through natural sanskaras from one form to another and is relatively natural. Until the unnatural sanskaras that man contacts are wiped out, the individual cannot progress, meaning he cannot enter the process of involution. Consciousness progresses through natural sanskaras, but in man, because of the creation of unnatural sanskaras, imagination expands to an infinite extent. The expanding of man's imagination produces infinite nothingness. The expanding ignorance that takes itself as knowledge. In evolution, ignorance, unconscious knowledge, does not express itself as knowledge, and thus is not deceptive until in human form. When man perceives, he knows; when he does not, is perceptive. In man, this unconscious knowledge expresses itself as knowledge when it is actually ignorance. Thus, man contacts unnatural sanskaras and finds his progress in knowing himself and in finding knowledge restricted by his own self. Very interesting play of words, but very, very well explained. I repeat, in man, this unconscious knowledge expresses itself as knowledge with a big K. So first knowledge is small k. In man, this unconscious knowledge expresses itself as knowledge when it is actually ignorance. Thus, man contacts unnatural sanskaras and finds his progress in knowing himself and in finding knowledge restricted by his own self, which again is the small self. So he himself creates the barrier for his own progress.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So interesting. I think very useful distinction between natural and unnatural sanskaras. With that, we move forward to the next chapter. Any thoughts before that? Okay. Let's start with the next chapter: mind, thoughts, desires, and actions. The first state of sanskaras is formless. In the mental state, sanskaras are in fine seed form. In subtle form, they are thin, germinating. And in gross form, they are thick, flowered. Mind thinks of desires and has aspirations, with the result that it experiences the most finite sanskaras, fine, mental, almost formless imprints. And it gathers the impressions of subtle sanskaras in the most subtle form. Thoughts of the mind, desires, cravings, sensations, needs create sanskaras of thoughts, which are required to be experienced grossly or subtly. All sanskaras reside in the mental body as seeds and are reflected in the subtle world as energy or in the gross world as form. In the state of man, good thoughts create good sanskaras and bad thoughts create bad sanskaras that necessitate the experiencing of them in either subtle or gross form. The meaning of the mind's sure. Go ahead.
I have a problem here. So here, what is good and bad?
After discourses, when we see good and bad, we are always questioning. Till then, morality was on top. There is no morality. There's no good. There is no bad. Baba has told us.
Yes.
So,
in the state of man, good thoughts create good sanskaras. Bad thoughts create bad sanskaras. That necessitate the experiencing the either of in either subtle or gross form. Okay, but here who is qualifying those thoughts as good or bad? And how do we make a distinction of good or bad?
I don't have an answer
Because,
for you.
say I'll give you an example. A lustful thought of an animal is a normal samskara. But a lustful thought of man, it becomes a bad sanskara.
I think my take would be any thought or action that would, in a very simplistic way, which we will not hesitate to do in presence of Baba, is a good sanskara. And if you would like to hide it from Baba, it would be a bad one.
Okay, with
that's
your
one
example,
easy way.
easy way, but that is one of the cornerstones for us to grind ourselves. So if we can perform something in front of Baba, we are sure that it is good.
Yes.
But if you think of the same thing from an animal's point of view, when an animal has a lust, even in front of Baba, it will go through that lust.
Yeah. Yes.
But man, you say, should not do that. So there, the distinction of good and bad has come at that level.
Yes.
So only good and bad qualitating the thought comes after evolution, only in the man's speech.
Yes,
Probably.
because then only you have been given the power to, or a judgment,
Yeah.
to decide. Yeah.
No, but even then, I think I'm still I like your good and definitive distinction that Sanjay ji mentioned. But still, I'm thinking if that is what is the good and bad, right? So it's debatable, right?
Yeah, it's
So
not absolute, but it is for only Baba lovers, in a sense, who really love him. They only will have this kind of a tool, rather, to decide what is right, not right.
There,
Yeah.
say,
So it's
we will have to expand from there. Say, as evolution progresses, at the stage of human being or man, pardon the women for the word, uh, the awakening of, say, group living, giving and taking, all these aspects come into the picture. So the thoughts of not hurting another person, giving something in not in return to somebody, service, say ultimately to surrender, all these aspects develop from human stage onwards. So these are the qualities which we acquire as human being. So this goes through in different say janmas, and then once we perfect this, our evolution starts. So probably that is how I look at this. Say, because good
yeah,
and bad keeps me hurting all the time. So what is good, what is bad? That is all.
yeah.
no, actually, don't hurt.
Okay.
So all I am saying is there is no good, there is no bad. So
No, if you take
our conditioned mind and our parenting and our organized religion has forced us to classify and classify to decide, to choose. I mean, to decide, to choose. It is a guide to decision making. This good and bad. But Baba has opened my eyes to say that there is nothing other than sanskaras. So the choice that you are making is only on your sanskaric progress, and of course that can happen only in to a person who is on the path, who is with Baba and all of that. But one who is there shouldn't be worried about good or bad. Should not be, is what I feel.
no,
I hope I'm
if
making
you
sense.
No.
if we take that logically in a scientific way, then there is no progress.
Yeah,
So
because
I
you are
will give
doing
you an
what you are
example. No,
programmed to
I'll give
do.
you an example. No, I will give you an
Karthik, you are
example.
saying,
No.
yeah.
I'm not saying that. I'll give you an example. Do you remember the chapter on violence and non-violence? With the examples, with the beautiful examples of the mother and so on. So it is easy for someone not on the path to assume something to be bad. Okay, when after determination of the sanskaric impact, if a person takes a decision to do something, it may not be bad. So, in effect, the societal structure of good or bad at a universal level doesn't apply at a soul level, is all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything beyond that.
No,
So,
no,
the
Agreed.
societal construct of you have to do this is a construct that does not apply on the spiritual path, especially one who is in the Baba path. Just read violence and non-violence, then you'll understand what I'm trying to say. Is lying bad?
Yes. Yeah, that's
Is
correct.
killing
But
bad?
Baba
Is
Baba
killing bad?
has
No, is killing bad? Right?
yeah. And
So like
understood.
that,
But
like that.
these are the examples which are very extreme on
No,
day-to-day
I
life.
understand. I understand.
I think the Baba's My Wish message, and how to love
Perfect.
God, those messages do give
I
us.
totally agree.
Most of the actions can be guided by those messages actually. And when these extreme situations arise, somebody getting killed, a poor fellow getting killed, then what action do you take? These are very rare situations. And Baba will guide us to take the right action in those situations.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
Okay. Everybody agrees?
Okay, somewhat okay.
Or I have stirred the pot a little more, Mama.
Yes. No, only thing is, say different religions or different societies or different ages created different structure of good
Definitions.
and bad. That is
Yes.
another aspect in development. But
No doubt.
actually, in a spiritual path, there has to be some universal good and universal bads. So that is what Baba is telling us. So universal good is love, compassion, all these things, and service and all that. So that we need to imbibe. Say one religion may say the same thing or in a slightly modified way in a different process and all that, or they may be slightly restrictive as some religions say this is how and this is the only way you have to do. So there may be ritualistic practices attached to each of these concepts also. We have to go beyond that and find out what is the actual real good and what is the say ignorance part of the bad.
So I
Yes, yes,
again
that's
beg to differ. I don't want to prolong this, but I'll just make one point. I still don't think there is universality. It is personal. Because of our journeys, because of the nature of the divine theme, the determination of good or bad is personal, not universal. Universal definition of good or bad is imposed by conditioned minds, conditioning, and mostly by religion and societal structures. All of that, right? Societal structures are given. That's law, right? But the programming has happened through that. But the determination of good or bad is personal and soul level and not universal. I point taken. There are some things which are non-debatable, right? Love, compassion, all of that, right? But I think the determination is personal.
Personal. That
Something
is
to think about.
dependent on the sanskaras
Exactly.
of the individual soul.
Individual soul.
Okay.
It can never be beyond the soul.
Yes. Yes.
Something to think about. I mean, I just want to provoke all your thinking.
Yes.
Please think. I have been
Yes.
thinking about this for a long time. I think it's still this is where I have come to. Okay. Anyway, so let's continue. The meaning of the mind's experiencing the most finite mental imprints, which are practically formless. Mental imprints are practically formless, either grossly or subtly, is that at the time of a good experience, the mind is in a happy mood and feels happiness. The mind's experiencing bad sanskaras means it is in a miserable state and suffers. I think we should have just waited for some time. Here's a good distinction and explanation of what is good or bad. Right? It brings the element of the mind, which is good, which explains this further. Right? Human gross consciousness equates good with happiness or pleasure and equates bad with misery or pain. In the inner working of the mind, thoughts become desires and desires become actions. That is, the most finite sanskaras in seed form germinate and are experienced first subtly as desires, then grossly in actions. By thoughts, the seeds becoming desires, subtle, and these desires turning into actions, grossness. New sanskaras are created as impressions which require to be spent, either grossly or subtly at a future time. These new impressions are imprints on the mind and are in seed form. They lie dormant in the mind until the mind comes for them to be expressed or thought of. So I like this para, which I'd like to read again. By thoughts, seeds, becoming desires, subtle, and these desires turning into actions, grossness, new sanskaras are created as impressions which are required to be spent, experienced either grossly or subtly at a future time. And again, this is also a very useful reference. In the inner working of the mind, thoughts become desires, and desires become actions. That is, the most finite sanskaras in seed form germinate and are experienced first subtly as desires and then grossly in actions. So mind, then subtly as a desire and grossly in action. Yeah. These new impressions are imprints on the mind and are in seed form. They lie dormant in the mind until the time comes for them to be expressed or thought of. To overcome the human condition of mind, limitedness, it is essential that desires be uprooted, whether they are good or bad. Man should stop thinking in terms of good or bad, happiness or misery, pleasure or pain, but he cannot because of desires. If old sanskaras that were experienced grossly or subtly as happiness or misery do not result in actions, then the thoughts of misery or happiness, suffering or joy do not give rise to new sanskaras, which need to be experienced in the future, either happily or miserably. If the mind is devoid of joy or sorrow while experiencing these old sanskaras and does not think, that is, react, no new sanskaras are created. It is the desire or thought of happiness or misery that creates more sanskaras, good or bad.
Karthik, you can read these two paragraphs once again.
Sure. I will actually read from here. I also want to do that.
Okay,
To overcome the human condition of mind, limitedness, it is essential that desires be uprooted, whether they are good or bad. Man should stop thinking in terms of good or bad, happiness or misery, pleasure or pain, but he cannot because of desires. If old sanskaras that were experienced grossly or subtly as happiness or misery do not result in actions, then the thoughts of misery or happiness, suffering or joy do not give rise to new sanskaras which need to be experienced in the future, either happily or miserably. If the mind is devoid of joy or sanskaras, a joy or sorrow while experiencing these old sanskaras and does not think, react, no new sanskaras are created. Key thing is here. If old sanskaras that were experienced grossly or subtly as happiness or misery do not result in actions, then the thoughts of misery or happiness, suffering or joy do not give rise to new sanskaras which need to be experienced in the future, either happily or miserably. So we have heard this before. Don't convert thoughts to action. The definitive meaning and explanation for that is here, right?
Yes, you can link this to all the different techniques of, say, even Buddhistic tradition
Exactly.
or our own view. So where you have to act as just a witness, keep say seeing what thoughts come into your
Objective
mind.
witness.
Don't go behind the thought, but just let them happen, and then they will die down if you do not react to them. That
Don't
is a
indulge.
practical way of experiencing this aspect.
Correct. Good point. Good point. Remaining an objective witness, and
Yes,
more
yes, yes.
importantly, just giving the thought, firstly, trying to minimize the thoughts. But if thoughts appear, just watching them go and not indulging in them, so that they either convert to action or breed other thoughts, is the spiritual way.
Yes.
Great. If the mind is devoid of joy or sorrow while experiencing these old sanskaras and does not think, that is, react, no new sanskaras are created. It is the desire or thought of happiness or misery that creates more sanskaras, good or bad. So, indulging in the thought and imagining the result of that thought to result either in happiness or misery is the problem.
Yeah.
Indulge in the thought. I mean, eliminate the thought ideally, but it's very difficult, right? So we keep making a mistake.
No, the main thing here is every action we do, the ultimate goal is our mental satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
See, that is the result of every action we do. If we were not in the spiritual mode, for our own
Yes.
satisfaction, we do everything only for our own satisfaction. Even
Yes,
we love our
gratification.
child
You can
because
even
that gives
use
us
the
satisfaction.
word gratification. Yes.
Self-gratification, correct. But now, once we step into the spiritual mode, what happens? Our goal is to please Baba. See, that itself, staying away from ourselves, is a path that we will be following in a new way. That redeems us from the old cycle of creating sanskaras and spending the sanskaras.
Yes. This is also in our own say Hindu tradition. We say chitta shuddhi.
Mm.
So it used to be explained as this is a sort of a boiling pot. So bubbles
Mm-hmm.
keep coming out of the boiling pot. So you don't react on the bubbles. So you just allow it to bubble out and then cool down, so that you should come to a stage where the no more bubbles are there. That is sanskara less. So what comes out is a sort of a desire or a feeling or a thought. So if you keep reacting to that, then new thoughts will come and you are going to add more fuel to that already boiling pot. So that is the way it is graphically explained. I think chitta shuddhi is the word used where we have to. And how do you do it? Do not react, just watch it, let it happen in your mind, never bring it out. That is what is told. These are all the same techniques of say meditation and other processes.
Vipassana in Buddhism, yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
Correct. So, good discussion on this topic. So, let us continue. These good or bad sanskaras are impressions of actions, good or bad, previously done, which are required to be experienced grossly by other actions or subtly by other desires. Every previous sanskara experienced subtly as a desire or grossly in action leaves an imprint, like a memory. And these imprints inevitably cause one to think or desire in terms of happiness or misery. This is the working of sanskaras. And again, this is a very good line. These good These good or bad sanskaras are impressions of actions, good or bad, previously done, which are required to be experienced grossly by other actions or subtly by other desires. There's only two things that happen, right? And for instance, I continue. For instance, a person's mind desires to taste a mango. This is a sanskara in the form of an impression in the person's mental body, storehouse of memories, meaning a mango previously left its imprint on the mind. This imprint is reflected from the mental body as thought, through the subtle body as desire, and finally into the gross form. Senses desire the taste of a mango. The person's mind thinking about the mango feels joy or sorrow subtly as he experiences this desire. Yet, he is unconscious of the root of this desire. This is the subtle experience of desire. And during this desiring, the mind subtly feels joy or sorrow depending on the possibility of having the mango. The person then takes action, putting the thought and desire into gross form by eating the mango and knowing its delicious taste. Consequently, he feels happiness. Desire is satisfied.
For this season alone, desires remain for the next season. Okay.
So I think here there is an important line. The person's mind is thinking about the mango, feels joy or sorrow subtly as he experiences this desire. Yet he is unconscious of the root of this desire. This is the subtle experience of desire. And during this desiring, the mind subtly feels joy or sorrow depending on the possibility of having the mango. So is it something to understand that the mind has the thought, but the indulgence of the thought to link it to sorrow or happiness is done in the subtle way? Because clearly he says subtly feels joy or sorrow. Is that, or is it just a use of mind and subtle which is confusing me?
No, subtly feels or joy or sorrow means these emotions, feelings are in the subtle sphere now.
No.
No, actually, we are living in all the three planes. So when we do an action, our gross body is used, but our feelings and other things, they are in the subtle sphere of our
Body.
own
Correct.
Yes.
Correct. Agree.
See, there
So
are two
enjoying
uses.
music, there is no activity on the gross body, but we enjoy music. That is done at the subtle plane in our body itself.
I think many times the two words are used: subtle, the world, the body, and the energy. All is one type of subtle word. But in English, there is the flowers are so beautiful. There is a subtle smell, subtle perfume smell that's coming. That's very light, and that in those situations also the word subtle is used.
Yes. Something which you can only feel, you don't
Less
see.
gross. Opposite of gross. Less gross.
Yes.
Yeah.
See, here, during this desiring, the mind subtly feels joy or sorrow. Very
That's the meaning here.
mildly feels joy and sorrow.
Yes.
Good point. Agreed. All right. So let's continue. The first word Om was the first sanskara. Sanskaras are of three types or forms: those gathered by the mental body as seeds, those gathered by the subtle body as desires, and those gathered by the gross body as acts. This is a new play of words, but I think it's fantastic, right? So those are in the mind are just seeds, because you can ignore the seed, don't give it soil, don't give it, don't indulge it, then it's over. When you indulge it,
That's why They say they use the analogy of say frying the seeds. So once you fry the seeds, it will never germinate. So if you do not
Okay.
fry them
Roast
by
the
excessive,
seeds so that you
roasted,
make
yes,
them impotent.
important.
So I think there is something like that even with the use of in Hindu culture, the use of til uh, in all the rituals concerning death. I think it's something like that, right? So till doesn't grow, right? Or doesn't grow to a seed, or I don't know what it is, something like that. The black till that's used for all the rituals around death. I think there's some similar analogy or symbolism there.
I don't know, but I have been questioning why till all that formality. But you are
Yeah.
likely to drive me to an answer there, probably. Okay.
Let me know if you find out.
Yes, yes.
Okay. I think I heard this somewhere, but I think there is a dead end in till. So till doesn't germinate. So something like that. Anyway, I may be wrong. I continue. When experiencing mentally the most finite mental sanskaras, the result is that a feeling is created in the mind of happiness or misery, or the thought of such experience, which creates new sanskaras, new seeds. The result of new sanskaras weakens the old sanskaras or effaces them from the mental body. When a person experiences sanskaras grossly in the form of gross thoughts, the feeling of happiness or misery created while having the subtle experience, the desire, gives rise to new sanskaras. These gross sanskaras are tight and strong, firm and deep. The seeds have taken root. It is the first unthought of and unexperienced sanskaras stored that are experienced subtly as desires and then grossly in action. It is during this first subtle experience of desire that the thoughts of happiness or misery create new sanskaras which are experienced later. According to the resulting gross experience, the resulting thoughts of happiness or misery produce new sanskaras and desires which are experienced later in either subtle or gross form. Desire is sanskaras in subtle form, and thought is sanskaras in seed form. It is only desire which is fulfilled grossly, acted upon, that creates new, firm, deep seated sanskaras. Seeds imprinted in the mental body as latent thoughts. If a person's mind experiences sanskaras mentally as thought and produces new sanskaras in subtle form as desire by passing through happiness or misery, and if the human mind does not experience them grossly by acting upon the desire, then there is no chance for the mind to create new gross sanskaras. If mind succumbs, let it, but do not let the body succumb. The meaning of the mind's experiencing the sanskaras subtly is the mind's desiring. And to experience the sanskaras mentally means the mind's thinking or feeling. With the start of thinking, the most finite sanskaras, the seeds, force the mind to experience them mentally. There is then, in fact, no desire, no longing. But the sanskaras in subtle form are there in the subtle body, and with the rise of desires and longing, mind feels misery or happiness, which creates new subtle sanskaras, desires. When the mind thinks, thoughts in the form of seeds arise. Then these seeds germinate unless they are not felt, which affects the subtle body one desires. Desires pass through the subtle body, energy manifests, and when these desires and longings are grossly fulfilled, which makes the mind experience misery or happiness, new gross sanskaras are formed. Gross sanskaras are deep-seated imprints on the mind, and they leave their mark, which means they produce new thoughts. The human mind fluctuates between good and bad constantly. Good thoughts, good desires, good feelings, when acted upon, are helping others in need, worshipping God in truth, giving in charity, honesty in one's affairs. Bad thoughts, bad desires, and bad feelings, when acted upon, are harassing others, inflicting pain, wishing others ruin, or unnatural sexual acts. That which is essential to transcend the mind and go beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, is that while experiencing sanskaras mentally as thought seeds, or subtly as desires, or grossly as acts, there should be no thought of misery or happiness. This is not possible for ordinary human beings. The remedy, therefore, is that while experiencing sanskaras mentally and experiencing happiness or misery subtly, that is in the form of desire for such a state, there should be no gross experience thereof. This means only one thing: the thoughts, the desires should not be put into action. The state of man is that he is filled with desires, and the state of realization is that one is desireless. Desires are of two kinds: the desire to experience creation or the desire to realize the self. The desire for God realization creates subtle and mental sanskaras and not gross ones. Because to see God, to meet with God, to feel God, to hear God, and to experience God as self, how can this be experienced grossly? God, in essence, is formless. The desire to realize God eventually takes human consciousness beyond the experience of the physical body into the subtle realm of pure energy and into the mental realm of pure mind. God, in essence, is infinite. How could any desire for him be limiting? Experiencing formless and infinite God involves having the experience of the planes of infinite energy and infinite mind. It is by desiring to experience the world that man remains limited. That is, subtle sanskaras, desires, get created, which are experienced grossly, and they create binding limitation. This means the desire to experience the world keeps man not knowing what lies beyond the experience of matter. It is, one second, let me see how many pages are left in this. I think, shall we just stretch and finish off 1.5 pages? I think we should. It is by desiring to experience the world that man remains limited. That is, subtle sanskaras, desires get created which are experienced grossly, and they create binding limitation. This means that the desire to experience the world keeps man not knowing what lies beyond the experience of matter. It is self-will, either to desire God or desire the world, because in both cases, the individual mind seeks happiness for itself. The self-will of the individual who desires either God or the world may be termed selfishness. In other words, it is selfish to desire either God or the world, because in both situations, the mind of man seeks happiness for itself. This predicament is the state of man. If While desiring the good of others, one has not the slightest thought of self and thinks only for their welfare, only of their welfare. No new subtle or gross sanskaras are created. When there is no desire for self, there cannot be any question of happiness or misery. But this is impossible, as only the Sadgurus and avatars give happiness to others, since they are not for themselves but for the world. The Sadgurus are void of limited self. They could never desire anything for themselves. They have attained God realization, Satchit Ananda, and have infinite knowledge, power, and bliss as their existence. What could they possibly desire but to work to make others free and experience God? When an ordinary man wishes subtly by desire his wife well and endeavors grossly by labor to make her happy, he is actually thinking of his own desire and experience of happiness for himself. The actuality is that the wish itself, unconscious desire, comes forward and becomes the will of the person concerned. He is actually thinking of himself, his own happiness. But this is not the case with a Sadguru, who is beyond desire, beyond longing. In the end, self-dedication and complete surrender to a Sadguru or the avatar is the final remedy to be freed from the bondage of sanskaras. I think we'll end here. I'm reminded
Yes,
of one thought that one phraseology that discourses uses. So if you remember, the journey is from selfishness, which is what here. There's a beautiful explanation of two types of selfishness, even God realization and mumukshatvam, which is what Vedanta calls it. That is also selfish, which is true because it is at the level of the individual soul. But then discourses uses this example of selfishness going to selflessness, and then he uses another word, selfness in all.
selfness, yes, in all,
Right? Selfish, selflessness, and then selfness in all. I like that progression of phraseology very much. So I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah. Okay, very interesting day. I really loved the reading. I hope all of you on the call enjoyed it as much as I did. And we will get back together tomorrow morning as Sunday read.
Karthik, how did you put this marker here?
So I just right-clicked. I'll just show you again. Just 1 second. So I just select comment. Yeah. Do you, on the top, do you use Adobe
Okay.
Do you use Adobe Reader? Yeah. So just select this and just click that. It creates a new one wherever you click after. And then you can just type thing. Yeah. But by default, it may have a different shape. I think I have selected the blue shape to a blue square shape. It may show some other shape. That's fine. Okay.
So, thank you. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba, everybody.
Jai Baba, everyone.
Sunil has been unusually quiet. I hope there's a barrage of questions tomorrow. Otherwise, I'll be disappointed.
Sunil just turned on. Jai Baba, Sunil.
I'm listening, but I'm distracted. Jai Baba, sorry.
Okay.